Welcome back, amazing people. Don't forget to comment where you're watching from today. Sometimes the most powerful moments of justice happen in the most unexpected places, and this story of courage and consequence would prove to be one that nobody on that subway car would ever forget. It was a typical Wednesday evening on the New York City subway, with the fluorescent lights casting their harsh glow over the tired faces of commuters heading home. The A train rattled through the tunnels of Manhattan, carrying its usual mix of office workers, students, and city dwellers. Among them sat Thomas Williams, a respected community college professor, grading papers on his laptop, his quiet dignity evident in his well-worn tweed jacket and careful posture. What nobody on that subway car knew was that another passenger would soon transform their evening commute into a moment that would capture headlines across the nation. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the legendary actor and former governor of California, sat quietly reading a book about American history, his presence somehow going unnoticed among the distracted commuters. The trouble began when three young men entered the car at 42nd Street. Led by Robert Pierce, they immediately began to make their presence known, loud voices carrying over the rhythmic clatter of the train. Their expensive designer clothes and arrogant demeanor set them apart from the working-class passengers around them. Pierce's attention soon fixed on Professor Williams, who remained absorbed in his work, unaware of the growing tension. "Hey, look what we got here," Pierce announced to his friends, Michael Stone and James Cox. "Someone thinks this is his personal office." The professor glanced up briefly but returned to his grading, his expression remaining neutral despite the clear provocation. Pierce, emboldened by his friend's snickers, moved closer. "Don't you know this is our territory? Maybe you should find another car." The racial undertones in his voice were unmistakable, causing several passengers to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Some buried their faces deeper in their phones, while others stared resolutely at the floor, not wanting to get involved. Professor Williams began quietly packing his laptop away, his movements deliberate and composed. This only seemed to anger Pierce more. "What's wrong? Too good to answer when someone's talking to you?" Stone and Cox moved to flank their leader, creating an intimidating triangle around the seated professor. What they didn't notice was that Arnold Schwarzenegger had set down his book, his legendary features hardening as he observed the escalating situation. The former governor had spent decades standing up against injustice, both on screen and in real life, and the scene unfolding before him struck at the very core of what he believed America should stand against. Pierce, growing increasingly aggressive in the face of Williams' continued dignity, reached out to knock the professor's laptop bag from his hands. "Maybe you need to learn some respect." The bag clattered to the floor, papers spilling across the dirty subway car floor as the train swayed through a turn. That was the moment when everything changed. A voice, instantly recognizable to anyone who had ever watched an action movie in the last 4 decades, cut through the tension like a knife. "I believe you're the one who needs to learn about respect." The words carried that unmistakable Austrian accent that had delivered so many memorable lines, but this time, they weren't part of a script. Arnold stood up, his 6 feet 2 inches frame unfolding to its full height. Even at his age, his presence was commanding, shaped by years of bodybuilding, action roles, and public service. The three young men turned, their expressions transforming from arrogance to shock as they recognized who was addressing them. "I've been watching," Arnold continued, moving deliberately toward them, "and I have to ask myself, is this really how brave men behave? 3 against 1, using intimidation against someone who's just trying to do his work." His voice carried no threat, just disappointment and steel-hard conviction. Pierce, trying to maintain his bravado, stuttered, "This isn't your business, old man. Stay out of it." But the shake in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. Stone and Cox had already begun to step back, their earlier confidence evaporating under the steady gaze of the Terminator himself. "When I see injustice, I make it my business," Arnold replied, now standing between the three men and Professor Williams. "You know, I came to this country with nothing but dreams and determination. I've seen America at its best and its worst. Right now, you're showing its worst." Other passengers had begun to pull out their phones, recording the surreal scene unfolding before them. Professor Williams remained seated, his dignity intact, watching as this unexpected champion stood in his defense. The contrast between the professor's quiet strength and Arnold's commanding presence created a powerful image that would soon go viral across social media. "Let me tell you something about real strength," Arnold continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent subway car. "It's not about intimidation. It's not about numbers. And it's certainly not about making yourself feel big by trying to make others feel small." Pierce's face had gone from red with aggression to pale with recognition. His friends had already begun inching toward the door, clearly hoping for the next stop to provide an escape route. But Arnold wasn't finished with his lesson. "You look strong, well-dressed, educated. You could be using that privilege to lift others up, to make this city better. Instead, you choose to be bullies. Tell me, what would your families think if they saw this video? Your employers? Is this really who you want to be?" The train was approaching the next station, and the three men looked increasingly desperate to get away from the situation they had created. But Arnold had positioned himself in a way that made it clear they would have to acknowledge their behavior before being allowed to retreat. "I'll tell you what's going to happen now," Arnold said, his tone suggesting no room for argument. "You're going to apologize to this gentleman. Then you're going to help him pick up every single paper you knock down. And then maybe you'll take some time to think about how you can be better men than you were today." Professor Williams finally spoke, his voice carrying the same quiet dignity that had marked his entire bearing throughout the confrontation. "No apology is necessary. Sometimes the best teaching moments come from unexpected places." His words carried no bitterness, only wisdom. But Arnold stood firm. "I disagree, Professor. These young men need to learn that actions have consequences, and that real strength includes the courage to admit when you're wrong." He turned back to Pierce and his friends. "Well." The three men, thoroughly humbled, mumbled their apologies and quickly bent to gather the scattered papers. Other passengers, emboldened by Arnold's intervention, began to help as well. The entire subway car had transformed from a place of tension and fear to one of community and support. As the train pulled into the station, Pierce and his friends made a quick exit, their earlier bravado replaced by evident shame. But before they could disappear into the crowd, Arnold called out one final message. "Remember this feeling. Let it guide you to become the kind of men who protect others, not threaten them." Professor Williams turned to thank his unexpected defender, but Arnold waved off the gratitude. "I should be thanking you," he said, "for showing such dignity in the face of ignorance. That kind of strength is what really makes America great." The other passengers, many still recording, had witnessed something extraordinary. Not just a celebrity intervention, but a moment of genuine moral courage that transcended fame or status. As the story would spread across social media in the coming hours, it would spark important conversations about privilege, responsibility, and the power of standing up for what's right. In the days that followed, numerous commuters who had been present would share their versions of the event. Some focused on Arnold's commanding presence, others on Professor Williams' quiet dignity, but all agreed on one thing. They had witnessed a moment where the line between movie hero and real-life hero had blurred, reminding everyone that courage and justice aren't just for the silver screen. The incident would lead to unexpected consequences. Pierce and his friends would be identified through social media, leading to soul-searching apologies and commitments to community service. Professor Williams would receive an outpouring of support from his students and colleagues, many sharing their own stories of facing similar situations. But perhaps the most lasting impact came from Arnold himself, who would use the incident as a launching point for a broader discussion about responsibility and courage in everyday life. "We all have the power to be heroes," he would later say in a viral tweet. "Sometimes it just means being willing to stand up when others sit down." As the subway continued its journey through the city that evening, the car was quieter than usual, but it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the thoughtful quiet of people contemplating their own roles in creating the kind of world they wanted to live in. The story would become more than just another viral video. It would serve as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful acts of heroism happen not in movies, but in the everyday moments when someone chooses to stand up for what's right. Have you ever witnessed someone standing up against injustice? Share your story in the comments below. Remember, it only takes one person to make a difference, and that person could be you. like, and subscribe for more stories of everyday heroes making our world a better place. The morning after the subway incident, New York City woke up to a story that would shake its conscience. The video of Arnold Schwarzenegger confronting the subway bullies had gone viral overnight, accumulating millions of views and sparking intense discussions across social media platforms. But what happened next would prove even more compelling than the initial confrontation. Robert Pierce sat in his corner office at a prestigious Manhattan investment firm, staring at his phone as notifications continued to pour in. The video had spread far beyond New York, and viewers worldwide were identifying him and his friends. His hands trembled as he read email after email from colleagues, clients, and even his own family members, all expressing their shock and disappointment at his behavior. Meanwhile, Professor Thomas Williams arrived at his community college to find an unexpected crowd of students waiting outside his classroom. Many held signs expressing support, while others simply wanted to shake his hand. The quiet dignity he had shown in the face of intimidation had resonated deeply with people who had faced similar situations but hadn't had an Arnold Schwarzenegger to stand up for them. Across town, Michael Stone and James Cox were facing their own reckonings. Stone, a junior partner at a law firm, had been called into an emergency meeting with the firm's ethics committee. Cox, who worked in real estate, found his phone ringing with calls from concerned clients who had recognized him in the video. The consequences of their actions were becoming painfully clear in the harsh light of day. Arnold Schwarzenegger, no stranger to media attention, found himself fielding calls from every major news network. But rather than simply recounting the incident, he chose to use this platform to address deeper issues. In a powerful interview with a morning news show, he spoke about the responsibility that comes with privilege and the importance of standing up against injustice in all its forms. "You know, when I came to America, I saw it as a land of opportunity," Arnold explained to the millions watching. "But opportunity means nothing if we don't ensure it exists for everyone. What I saw on that subway wasn't just about three men intimidating one person, it was about the choice we all face when we witness injustice. Do we stay silent, or do we stand up?" The story took an unexpected turn when Lisa Johnson, a passenger who had been recording from another angle, came forward with additional footage. Her video captured moments before Arnold's intervention, showing other passengers' discomfort and uncertainty. It sparked intense online discussions about the bystander effect and individual responsibility in the face of discrimination. Professor Williams, maintaining his characteristic composure, used the incident as a teaching moment in his sociology class. "What happened on that subway car is a microcosm of larger societal issues," he explained to his students, many of whom had seen the viral video. "But it also shows us how change can happen when people choose to take a stand." The ripple effects continued to spread. Robert Pierce's firm, facing mounting pressure from clients and the public, announced that he would be taking a leave of absence to reflect on his actions and engage in community service. Pierce, his arrogance replaced by genuine remorse, released a public statement acknowledging the harm he had caused. "I've spent my life building a successful career," Pierce's statement read, "but yesterday showed me that success means nothing without character. My actions were inexcusable, and they revealed prejudices I didn't even realize I carried. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I'm committing to change." Social media exploded with reactions to Pierce's statement. Some praised his honesty, while others remained skeptical. But the conversation had shifted from simple condemnation to a deeper discussion about privilege, accountability, and the possibility of redemption. James Cox and Michael Stone followed suit with their own apologies, each committing to concrete actions to make amends. Cox announced he would be volunteering at a local community center, while Stone offered to provide pro bono legal services to victims of discrimination. The incident had touched a nerve in the city, leading to broader conversations about daily acts of discrimination that often go unchallenged. Other videos began surfacing of similar incidents on public transportation, though few had such dramatic resolutions. Transportation authorities announced new initiatives to combat harassment and discrimination on the subway system. Arnold, true to his action hero persona, wasn't content to let the moment fade into just another viral video. He reached out to Professor Williams with an idea, using the incident as a catalyst for a larger movement. Together, they began planning a series of community forums addressing discrimination and the importance of active intervention. You know, in my movies, the hero usually solves problems with action scenes and dramatic fights, Arnold said during a community meeting. But real heroism often looks more like what Professor Williams showed: dignity, restraint, and unwavering strength in the face of intimidation. Sometimes the strongest response is maintaining your composure. Professor Williams, for his part, used his newfound platform to highlight the experiences of others who had faced similar situations without the benefit of a celebrity defender. His quiet eloquence and thoughtful analysis helped transform a viral moment into a meaningful dialogue about systemic issues. Local schools began inviting both Arnold and Professor Williams to speak to students about bullying, discrimination, and the importance of standing up for others. The talks always included practical advice about how to safely intervene when witnessing injustice, emphasizing that heroism comes in many forms. The three antagonists from the subway found themselves transformed by the experience in unexpected ways. Pierce, who had initially feared the incident would destroy his career, discovered a new sense of purpose through his community service work. He began mentoring at-risk youth, sharing his story as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked privilege and prejudice. Stone and Cox, following Pierce's lead, also found ways to make amends. They joined a community advocacy group focused on making public transportation safer and more inclusive for all New Yorkers. Their first-hand experience as reformed antagonists lent credibility to their efforts to prevent similar incidents. The subway car video became a training tool for corporate diversity programs, with consultants using it to illustrate both problematic behavior and effective intervention. Human resource departments across the country incorporated the incident into their sensitivity training materials, analyzing not just the overt confrontation but the subtle dynamics that led to it. Lisa Johnson's additional footage sparked particular interest among social psychologists, who used it to study bystander behavior and the factors that influence whether people intervene in discriminatory situations. Her video showed how Arnold's intervention had created a permission structure for others to show support, transforming a car full of uncomfortable bystanders into an engaged community. The incident also led to an unexpected collaboration between Arnold and Professor Williams. They began working on a public awareness campaign about active intervention, combining Arnold's star power with the professor's academic expertise. The campaign's message was simple but powerful: stand up, speak out, make a difference. As weeks passed, the story's impact continued to resonate. Public transportation systems across the country began posting signs encouraging passengers to report discriminatory behavior. Community organizations reported increased interest in bystander intervention training. Something about the combination of Professor Williams' dignity and Arnold's intervention had struck a chord that went beyond the usual viral video cycle. Even the location of the incident, the subway car itself, became symbolic. Regular commuters on the A train reported a subtle but noticeable change in atmosphere, with passengers seeming more aware of their responsibility to each other. The story had transformed an anonymous public space into a community where people felt more connected and responsible for one another's well-being. Arnold, reflecting on the incident's impact, noted how it demonstrated the power of individual choices. In movies, we often show heroes facing obvious villains, he said during a follow-up interview. But in real life, the choice to be a hero often comes in smaller moments, when we see something wrong and decide not to look away. Professor Williams continued his teaching, his classes now often filled to capacity with students drawn by his example of quiet strength. He maintained his modest demeanor, consistently deflecting praise to focus on the larger issues the incident had highlighted. What happened that day was just one moment, he would say. The real story is about what happens next, how we all choose to respond when we witness injustice. As the story continued to spread, it became clear that its impact wouldn't be measured just in viral views or media coverage, but in the small, daily choices people made when confronted with discrimination. The incident had provided a powerful reminder that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they ride the subway, stand up for others, and show that real strength often comes in the quietest moments. Have you witnessed a moment where someone stood up against discrimination? How did it change the situation? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about everyday heroes making a difference in our world. 1 month after the subway incident, the story continued to evolve in ways that no one could have predicted. What had started as a viral video of Arnold Schwarzenegger confronting discrimination had catalyzed a movement that was changing lives across the city and beyond. The transformation was perhaps most visible in Robert Pierce, whose journey from aggressor to advocate had captured public attention. On this particular morning, he stood before a group of high school students, sharing his story with a humility that would have been unimaginable just weeks before. "I was the villain in that video," Pierce admitted to the attentive teenagers. "But what happened next taught me that redemption is possible if you're willing to face your mistakes and do the hard work of changing." His voice carried the weight of someone who had confronted his own prejudices and emerged determined to make amends. Meanwhile, Professor Thomas Williams had returned to his regular teaching schedule, though his classes now attracted visitors from across the country. His approach to handling the subway confrontation had become a case study in dignity under pressure. Educational institutions nationwide were incorporating the incident into their curriculum, examining it from perspectives ranging from sociology to conflict resolution. Arnold Schwarzenegger's involvement hadn't ended with the subway intervention. The former governor had taken a personal interest in the aftermath, using his platform to promote dialogue about discrimination and the importance of active citizenship. His latest initiative, a partnership with the city's transit authority, was launching that week. "You know, in my movies, I usually solve problems with action," Arnold told reporters at the launch event. "But what we're doing here is about a different kind of action, the kind that changes hearts and minds." The program would place trained mediators on subway lines, ready to intervene in situations before they escalated to confrontation. James Cox and Michael Stone, the other 2 men from the incident, had found their own paths to redemption. Cox had started a mentoring program at his real estate firm, focusing on creating opportunities for underserved communities. Stone had returned to law school part-time, specializing in civil rights law with the goal of providing legal aid to discrimination victims. Lisa Johnson, whose additional footage had provided crucial context to the incident, had become an unexpected advocate for bystander intervention. Her viral video had sparked a nationwide conversation about the role of witnesses in preventing discrimination. "We all have phones," she would say in her presentations. "But the real question is, do we have the courage to use them responsibly?" The subway car where it all happened had taken on an almost mythical status. Transit workers reported that passengers would sometimes ask if they were riding in the Arnold car, and someone had even created an unofficial plaque commemorating the incident. More importantly, riders reported feeling more connected to their fellow passengers, more ready to speak up when they witnessed inappropriate behavior. Robert Pierce's transformation had been particularly profound. After his initial public apology, he had thrown himself into community service with an intensity that surprised everyone. Working with youth in underserved communities, he found himself confronting the very prejudices that had led to his actions that day. "The hardest part," Pierce explained to his young audience, "was realizing that my success in life wasn't just about my hard work. It was also about privileges I'd taken for granted. Understanding that changed everything about how I see the world." His words resonated with students who had experienced discrimination firsthand. Professor Williams had turned down numerous offers for book deals and speaking tours, preferring to focus on his teaching. However, he did agree to collaborate with Arnold on a series of educational videos about confronting discrimination. Their unlikely partnership brought together Williams' academic insight with Arnold's passionate advocacy. What Professor Williams demonstrated that day was true strength, Arnold would say in their first video. "Not the kind you build in a gym, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are and standing firm in your dignity." The series quickly became popular in schools and corporate training programs across the country. The impact rippled through New York's corporate culture. Companies began reviewing their diversity policies, not just as a response to public pressure but with a genuine desire to prevent the kind of attitudes that had led to the subway incident. Pierce's firm, in particular, had become a leader in promoting inclusive workplace practices. Michael Stone's law firm had undergone its own transformation. After initially placing him on leave, they had worked with him to establish a pro bono program focused on discrimination cases. Stone, who had once used his privilege to intimidate, was now using his legal expertise to defend those facing similar treatment. James Cox's real estate company had taken steps to address housing discrimination, with Cox himself leading initiatives to ensure fair treatment of all potential tenants. His personal experience had opened his eyes to discriminatory practices he had previously overlooked or accepted. The incident had also sparked a broader conversation about public transportation as a microcosm of urban society. Sociologists and urban planners studied how the subway system could be designed to promote positive social interactions and discourage discriminatory behavior. Arnold's mediator program was just one part of this larger transformation. Professor Williams' students had taken the lessons from the incident to heart, organizing their own anti-discrimination initiatives on campus. They called themselves Subway Scholars, embracing their professor's example of meeting ignorance with education rather than anger. What happened that day could have ended very differently, Professor Williams told his students. But because someone chose to stand up, it became a moment of transformation rather than just another story of discrimination. His words carried extra weight coming from someone who had lived through the experience. The three former antagonists had begun speaking together at events, sharing their journey from that moment of shame to their current work in promoting understanding. Their honesty about their transformation resonated with audiences, particularly young people struggling with their own prejudices. Arnold's involvement had given the story staying power beyond the usual viral news cycle. His action hero persona, combined with his genuine commitment to social justice, helped keep the conversation alive long after similar incidents had faded from public memory. In the movies, the story usually ends when the bad guys learn their lesson, Arnold noted during a community forum. But real life is more complicated. It's about what happens after that moment of realization, the daily work of becoming better people. The incident had also influenced how social media handled similar videos. Rather than just focusing on public shaming, platforms began promoting stories of transformation and redemption alongside instances of discrimination. The goal was to show that change was possible even for those who had acted wrongly. Lisa Johnson's role had evolved as well. She had become an expert on responsible documentation of public incidents, teaching others how to safely record discrimination while also being prepared to intervene. Her workshops emphasized the difference between recording for accountability and recording for entertainment. The subway system itself had become a laboratory for social change. Transit officials reported a significant decrease in discriminatory incidents, attributing it not just to the presence of mediators but to a general shift in passenger behavior. People were more likely to speak up, to offer support, to engage rather than ignore. Pierce, Stone, and Cox had formed an unlikely speaking trio, traveling to schools and businesses to share their story. Their message was powerful precisely because of their former roles as antagonists. They could speak directly to others who might harbor similar prejudices, showing a path to change. "We're not asking for forgiveness," Pierce would say in their presentations. "We're showing that change is possible, that one moment of ignorance doesn't have to define your life if you're willing to learn and grow from it." Their honesty about their struggles and transformation often moved audiences to tears. Professor Williams had maintained his quiet dignity throughout, becoming a symbol of resilience for many who face discrimination in their daily lives. His response to the incident, meeting hatred with composure and ignorance with wisdom, had provided a powerful model for others. "The true measure of character," he would tell his students, "is not in never facing discrimination, but in how we respond to it when we do." His words carried the weight of personal experience, making them all the more impactful for his listeners. As the story continued to evolve, it became clear that its greatest impact wasn't in the viral moment or even in the immediate aftermath, but in the slow, steady work of transformation that followed. Real change, as all the participants had learned, didn't happen in a single subway ride. It happened in the countless choices that followed. Have you witnessed someone's journey from prejudice to understanding? Share your stories of transformation in the comments below. Remember, change is possible when we're willing to confront our own biases and do the work to become better people. Like and subscribe for more stories of real-life transformation and courage. 6 months after the subway incident that captured the world's attention, New York City's A train pulled into the 42nd Street station on a crisp autumn morning. This time, something was different. A small plaque had been officially installed in the exact car where Arnold Schwarzenegger had stood up against discrimination, its simple message reading, "Change begins with one voice." The transformation that had started with a viral video had evolved into something far more profound. On this particular morning, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Professor Thomas Williams were riding that same subway line, but not by coincidence. They were heading to the launch of the city's new Stand Up, Speak Out initiative, a comprehensive program designed to combat discrimination on public transportation. Robert Pierce, Michael Stone, and James Cox were also on their way to the event, though they took a different train. The three men who had once been the antagonists of this story had become some of its most powerful advocates for change. Their journey from shame to redemption had inspired others to confront their own prejudices. "You know, when I first came to America, I learned that true strength isn't just about muscles," Arnold told the gathered crowd at the launch event. "It's about having the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult." Professor Williams showed that kind of strength that day, and now we're seeing it spread throughout our city. The initiative they were launching went far beyond the usual public awareness campaign. Drawing on lessons learned from the viral incident, it incorporated practical training for transit workers, a network of volunteer mediators, and a revolutionary app that allowed passengers to quickly report and respond to discriminatory behavior. Lisa Johnson, whose additional footage had provided crucial context to the original incident, had helped design the app's documentation features. "The goal isn't just to record incidents," she explained to reporters. "It's to create a community of active witnesses who know how to intervene safely and effectively." Professor Williams, still maintaining his characteristic humility, focused his remarks on the broader implications. "What happened that day on the subway was just a moment," he said. "What's happening now is a movement. We're seeing people realize that they have the power to shape the kind of community they want to live in." The three former antagonists had undergone remarkable transformations. Pierce had left his investment banking job to run a nonprofit focused on youth mentorship and anti-discrimination education. Stone had completed his additional legal training and now headed his firm's civil rights division. Cox had transformed his real estate practice into a model of fair housing advocacy. "We can't change what we did that day," Pierce told the audience, his voice carrying the weight of genuine remorse and hard-earned wisdom. "But we can change what happens next. Every day, we have the choice to be better than we were yesterday." His words resonated particularly with young professionals who saw their former selves in his story. The impact of the incident had spread far beyond New York. Cities across the country had begun implementing similar programs, often consulting with Arnold and Professor Williams on best practices. The subway confrontation had become a case study in how a single moment of intervention could catalyze lasting social change. Arnold's involvement had been crucial in maintaining momentum. His star power had kept the story in the public eye, but it was his genuine commitment to the cause that gave it staying power. He had devoted significant resources from his foundation to supporting anti-discrimination initiatives, focusing particularly on empowering bystanders to become active allies. "In the movies, the hero usually works alone," Arnold noted during his speech. "But real change happens when everyone decides to be a hero in their own way. Sometimes that means speaking up. Sometimes it means supporting others who speak up. But it always means doing something." The program's launch coincided with the release of a documentary about the incident and its aftermath, titled One Voice. The film traced not just the original confrontation but the ripple effects that had transformed lives across the city. It featured interviews with subway riders who had witnessed the incident, experts on social change, and most powerfully, the main participants themselves. Professor Williams' students had played a crucial role in the documentary, conducting interviews and providing academic context for the social dynamics at play. Their Subway Scholars initiative had grown into a nationwide network of student groups dedicated to combating discrimination on campus and beyond. The transformation of the three former antagonists formed the emotional core of the film. Their journey from privileged indifference through public shame to genuine understanding and advocacy provided a powerful message about the possibility of change. The documentary showed them working in communities they had once dismissed, learning from people they had once looked down upon. The hardest part wasn't facing public criticism, Stone revealed in his interview. It was facing ourselves, really seeing our own prejudices for the first time. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and then you have to decide what you're going to do about it. His candor about the internal struggle of confronting bias resonated with viewers. The film also highlighted the role of social media in both exposing discrimination and promoting positive change. Lisa Johnson's footage had demonstrated how technology could be used responsibly to document injustice while protecting dignity. The Stand Up, Speak Out app built on these lessons, providing tools for documentation while emphasizing active intervention. Arnold's Mediator program had proven remarkably successful, with trained volunteers now present on many subway lines during peak hours. Wearing distinctive pins that read, "Need help? Just ask," these mediators had helped defuse numerous potential confrontations before they escalated. The program's success had led to its expansion into other areas of public life. Shopping centers, sports venues, and public parks had begun implementing similar initiatives. The idea that bystanders could be trained to become active allies in preventing discrimination had taken hold across the city. Professor Williams had finally agreed to write a book, though not about the incident itself. Instead, he focused on the broader themes of dignity, resilience, and community that had emerged in its wake. Dignity in Motion: How Public Spaces Shape Our Humanity was already being adopted as required reading in sociology courses nationwide. The three former antagonists had also contributed to the book, writing honest accounts of their transformation. Their chapters dealt with privilege, prejudice, and the hard work of genuine change. "We're not looking for redemption," Cox wrote. "We're looking to help others avoid making the same mistakes we did." The subway car where it all happened had become a kind of rolling classroom. School groups would specifically request to ride in the Arnold car, where they would discuss civil rights, social responsibility, and the power of individual action. The plaque had become a touchstone, often surrounded by notes and messages from writers sharing their own stories of standing up against discrimination. As the launch event concluded, Arnold and Professor Williams took one more ride on the A train together. They were joined by Pierce, Stone, and Cox, a powerful symbol of how far things had come. Other passengers recognized them, of course, but instead of asking for autographs, they shared their own stories of transformation and hope. "You know," Arnold said during the ride, "people often ask me about my proudest achievements. They expect me to talk about movies or politics. But being part of this change, seeing how one moment can grow into a movement, that's something special." The others nodded in agreement, each reflecting on their own role in the story. Professor Williams, looking out at the familiar rhythm of the city passing by, added his own perspective. "What we're seeing is the power of choice. Every day, in countless small moments, we choose what kind of community we want to be. Sometimes it takes a dramatic moment to help us see those choices more clearly." As the train pulled into their stop, the group noticed a young woman standing up for an elderly man who was being harassed. She was wearing one of the Stand Up, Speak Out pins, and her intervention was calm, confident, and effective. The situation was resolved before it could escalate, ending with apologies and handshakes instead of confrontation. Arnold smiled at the scene. "See? The real heroes are out there every day, making those small choices that add up to big changes." The others watched as the young woman helped the elderly man with his shopping bags, other passengers now engaged and supportive rather than looking away. It was a perfect illustration of how far things had come, and a reminder that the work of creating positive change continues. One moment, one choice, one voice at a time. Have you been part of a moment that sparked positive change in your community? Share your story in the comments below. Remember, every voice matters, and change begins with the courage to speak up. Like and subscribe for more stories of transformation and hope in our communities.